feel sad for her. God bless Remy Ma. I feel sad for her because she, we really loved her. She left the terror squad, and my God, have we been on fire ever since.
It was like straight like, listen, this can't go on. It was about a year or so and some change before home. And we talked for about a couple of hours.
My whole beef with Fat Joe was really his loyalty. Later we become the best friends.
No one took Cuban Link's description of Fat Joe as fruity seriously. Joe is out here in a panic because Remy Ma just backed him up. Joe's name was recently brought up in a new case involving underage girls, bringing the long-standing feud between Joe, Remy, and Cuban back into the public eye. We may have been warned about this by Cuban and Remy after Joe's former hype man, Terrence Dixon, sometimes known as TA, filed a shocking lawsuit. The topic of conversation erupted once more. The news that Joe was being sued quickly spread throughout the New York media, and before you knew it, everyone was talking about it. The report's actual findings are as follows. Just the other day, this was broadcast at midday.
Fat Joe is being accused of sex acts with minors in a $20 million lawsuit. The rapper's real name is Joseph Cartagena. The man described as his hype man, Terrence T.A. Dixon, claims Cartagena, quote, had coercive labor exploitation, financial fraud, manipulation, violent intimidation, and psychological coercion. And
wait until you hear what TA claimed Joe was doing behind the scenes. If you believe Fruity was merely a jab, let us now discuss the man who initiated this whole situation. It turns out that TA, the person suing him, was formerly his hype man. He also tells us that he was manipulated, mistreated, and eventually deleted for years. TA was not a mere hype guy in the background. He spent 16 years with Joe. He now claims that those years were rife with mistreatment, cover-ups, and outright criminal activity. However, this has nothing to do with poor contracts or royalties. This case is dangerous and extends far beyond music. Joe was accused by TAs of being manipulated, threatened with violence, and coerced into performing degrading tasks, some of which were even captured on tape. In fact, he considered leaving his wife for her. However, Fat Joe snitched on himself in his songs, so do not believe TA. As stated in the lawsuit, Joe raps on She Is My Mama about a 16-year-old girl he had a liaison with and who would be unkind to him. It is no surprise that this song's comments section is overflowing these days. However, this case was about more than simply revealing Joe's naughty side. It was also about the hardships TA endured as a result of him. Aside from the fact that Joe withheld royalties and back-end payments, underpaid him, and refused to give him credit for writing the songs. Additionally, Joe forced TA to do it with women following concerts, often in front of other people, and it grows black still. TA states he was coerced into over 4,000 acts to keep his position in Joe's inner circle, something he now calls the Enterprise. To make it worse, Joe would threaten to leave him stranded overseas if he ever pushed back. The case is so disturbing, the court filing starts with a trigger warning. Moving on to the legal aspect, it is amusing that the attorneys who represent both TA and Fat Joe have personal grudges. Tyrone Blackburn is the same attorney who brought those shocking Diddy cases that resulted in DHS raids in Miami and Los Angeles, if the name seems familiar. You see, Tyrone criticized Joe Tacopina, Joe's attorney, on Instagram, and as far as we can tell at this point, it is going to be quite the show. Tyrone's recent support for TA makes it obvious that this is not just a haphazard money grab, it is more of a concerted legal attack connected to some of the most secure hip-hop communities. However, Joe's attorney claims that the accusations are untrue. According to Joe Tacopina, TA and his legal team are suing him in a clear act of reprisal for a civil action he filed against Dixon. This leads us to the following point. In fact, Joe filed the first lawsuit against TA back in April. As you can see, before these two went to court, TA made some outrageous claims against Joe online. Joe responded by suing TA first because TA was spreading false information about him on social media, and he later sued him for the same reasons. He defrauded him of his luggage and cast him in a variety of unpleasant situations, such as the one in which Joe essentially tormented a single female, and TA was compelled to accompany him. This is what TA said about it when he appeared on one of the shows last year.
He's standing in the lobby, shorty got a short skirt on. Your man Joe takes his whole hand, his whole arm, and throws it up her skirt.
However, that was only the start. TA went much farther. TA created an entire Instagram page on which he would ridicule Fat Joe in a variety of ways. For instance, he shared a picture of Diddy, Fat Joe, and Khaled, along with the following caption: Fat Joe and DJ Khaled, what happened now? Y'all going to act like y'all don't know Diddy sucker-ish? Y'all don't want to be a part of that baby oil, I see, but don't act like y'all wasn't with him. He then shared a picture of himself, Joe, and the other members of their crew during their kidnapping in Angola. However, it went beyond the past. A few months ago, when Joe and Remy released Out of Control, TA ridiculed Joe's appearance by posting a screen grab from the song video and stating ladies imaging waking up next to this sag bag every morning. Lil Joey, you are just terrible. And the list goes on and on. TA kept this going for months before Joe finally filed a lawsuit against him. Joe told media outlets that these claims of him owing TA money are completely false, and his lawyer basically said that it's just a full-blown extortion scheme by a bitter ex-team member. So who is right and who isn't? To find some answers and to see if TA was right or if he was capping, we gotta look into Joey's past, and what better place to start than his beef with Remy Ma and Cuban Link, who also came at him, just like TA. First, let's see what Remy had to say. Joe and Remy go way back, and they used to be locked in like family during the times of Terror Squad. However, there was also a terrible public and personal breakup between them. Joe wasted no time after Big Pun's death. In order to put Remy in the best possible position to win, he pulled her into Terror Squad and had her lean back front and center. However, everything went wrong when it came time for her to release her debut record. Remy believed she had been wronged by the Terror Squad. Behind the scenes, she blamed Joe directly for the poor release and the album's lack of promotion. She began exposing him in public at that point. There were gunshots, no filter. This is where things start to get serious. Joe was hurt, not just angry. He stated unequivocally in an interview that he would never be able to forgive Remy Martin. I was deeply offended by her. Remy was denigrating his entire family, which went too far for him, and this was not just industry jargon. Following that, Joe stated in a previous Smack TV interview that Remy's decision to depart was a good one. They have had nothing but success since she left.
I feel sad for her. God bless Remy Ma. I feel sad for her because she, we really loved her. She left the Terror Squad, and my God, have we been on fire ever since.
Remy was imprisoned shortly after, and Joe and she did not communicate at all during that time. The animosity lingered for years. However, after she left, everything seemed to change. Shortly after they dropped all the way up, they returned as if nothing had occurred. They finally had that face-to-face conversation and worked it out. She spoke with Joe over the phone a few months before Remy's release and offered to make amends. This is what she told Vlad TV during their interview with Remy and Joe.
He was like straight like, listen, this can't go on. It was about a year or so and some change before, and we talked for about a couple of hours.
What then changed? Remy acknowledged that at the time, she was impetuous, immature, and unsure of how to proceed in the game. Both of them grew up and decided to let the animosity go, according to Joe. However, it is not all love as it is with Remy when it comes to Fat Joe and Cuban Link. Joe and Cuban's feud is still going strong. Let us quickly clarify something now. For years, Cuban Link has been criticizing Fat Joe. When Cuban appeared online in 2021 with certain documents, he said that Fat Joe had been out here snitching, providing police with information about crimes in the Bronx, including forcing people to leave permanently. He even tried to blow the lid off by sharing documents and screenshots. The problem is that nothing was ever verified. Nobody was able to verify the authenticity of the documents, so Fat Joe simply returned and dismissed them. After that, in late 2024, Cuban changed course. He accused Joe of having a racist past this time. According to him, several others in the business had stories, and Cuban even revealed some of his own. He claimed that Joe had made dubious remarks and displayed some truly suspicious conduct. Again, nothing illegal, just more intensely tense personal turmoil. Naturally, Joe's filthy play in the game has always been the source of Cuban's greatest animosity. He often claimed that Joe tampered with his bag, obstructed his shine, and never kept it 100. That is precisely why Cuban Link jumped online 3 days ago as soon as he saw the Fat Joe lawsuit appear on TMZ, and he wasted no time in doing so. He stated it directly. Next up is Fat Joe. He claims that the authorities are keeping a close eye on Joe and that it appears they will soon capture him. Joe is next on the chopping block. According to Cuban,
they're gonna diddy you. They're gonna diddy Joe. Watch. And they got enough evidence to do it. They're gonna do the diddy on him. The FBI already did it.
Cuban stated that this is not an online rumor and that the FBI was already investigating it. According to him, there are receipts, and the most absurd thing is that Fat Joe essentially did it to himself. Like, he has only himself to blame if what is coming out is accurate. There are more grounds to think that Joe's days of freedom may be coming to an end. Cuban believes that TA's story may have some merit. Cuban wants to hear TA's version of the story because he was in the middle of it with them. In addition, Cuban finds it unbelievable that Fat Joe is attempting to sue TA. Joe is being sued by this individual who wrote music for him for free. Finally, Cuban essentially stated, the fact that Cuban would bring up Diddy is no accident, as Diddy and Joe did frequently party together. The whole situation is becoming gloomy and has a Diddy vibe to it. Regarding how wild Diddy's parties used to go, Joe has been rather candid. They were off the hook, he said. Fat Joe made it very evident what happens at the Diddy Freak Offs in that 2005 MTV promo.
It's hard to say which is more off the hook, a Diddy party or a Diddy after party.
When it comes to party tricks, Joe even made a joke about Diddy being the king of deceit. That is a loaded remark, let us face it. This is when things start to get interesting. Could Fat Joe have observed more than he disclosed if he was always surrounded by business players? Numerous pictures on the internet depict Joe beaming broadly, and he frequently remarks on how wild and enjoyable the atmosphere was. But now that Diddy is the subject of so many lawsuits and shady accusations, we are here examining everyone who was in the VIP rooms, and Fat Joe was one of them. Joe might have felt some heat when he was thus near to the fire, but we are not saying he did anything. Given the current Fat Joe story and the way Joe's name is being brought up in public, it is amusing that 50 Cent attracted attention. When there is news concerning Diddy, 50 is always the first person to make fun of him. Is a relationship there then? Do you recall the time when 50 Cent and Fat Joe were at odds with one another? It was a legendary beef. Joe was cool with Murder Inc., which is how all the drama began. At that time, 50 was determined to burn down the entire camp. Naturally, Fat Joe became enraged, and the two began a furious altercation. In addition to the wild scene at the 2005 VMAs when they were hurling insults live on stage, diss tracks flew and interviews became nasty. It was a war for years. Joe and the 50 Clown are attempting to outdo one another in the booth and on the streets, with Joe striking back. Now, however, the atmosphere is completely different. These two changed the course by 2024. 50 discussed how he and Joe are now essentially best buddies on the $1 Million Worth of Game podcast. 50 Cent stated,
My whole beef with Fat Joe was really his loyalty. Later, we become the best friends.
The disagreement was not even personal, according to 50. Throughout the entire Murder Inc. Ridge period, it was all about who was riding with whom. After the tension subsided, 50 began to value Joe's commitment and even referred to him as faithful to a default. Additionally, Fat Joe was honest, stating that he respects 50 and even acknowledging that the conflict contributed to his rise to prominence as a heavyweight in New York. This is when things start to get interesting. 50 has been abnormally quiet, defensive even, as a result of Diddy and Fat Joe getting implicated in some outrageous accusations. Joe is supporting 50 despite some people's belief that he would have burned him by now. 50 shared a picture of himself and Joe at a basketball game on Instagram. These unfounded charges and assertions are not credible. His caption stated, I am sad Joe must up with the criticism from the public and the harm to his reputation. This is a stick up. Fat Joe even included a 100 emoji in his response. But you can never be safe when you are 50. It is somewhat disheartening to witness such conduct from a man who makes it his life's work to harass others, particularly former adversaries. Many of the responses we received support our argument here as well. What is actually happening here then? Was there a broader partnership involved in that bull squash? Or does 50 have knowledge about the true events at their notorious parties that we do not? All we are trying to imply is that you have to question what T2 former ops are drinking behind closed doors when they start acting like best friends during a controversy.